Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down The Boys. Episode 5 is now here, and throughout this video we're gonna explain it all. This recap will contain all the Easter eggs, hidden details and callbacks to the comics that you might have missed. If you enjoy it here, please hit the thumbs up and make sure you subscribe for our videos every week. We're also doing in-depth breakdowns on House of the Dragon and covering all the nerdy stuff that you need to know now. With out of the way, thank you for clicking this video. Now let's get into The Boys episode 5.
I'm scared you'll hate me. Even more scared you won't.
Now we open with the V52 Expo, which gives us a quick history of Vought projects throughout the decades. Initially we begin with Homelander's back before then segueing into a montage. We start with the logo for Vought American, which is a little nod to the comics. Originally the company was called Vought America Corporation, which was then shortened to VAC. During issue 19 we learned about the history directly from the legend. VAC sold planes and weapons to the army, but in their production they had to cut corners. Things like engine seats weren't sealed, and it meant that ejector seats would burn up with the pilot. This led to hundreds of deaths, and things were worse in the Vietnam War. Vought sold rifles and tanks to the army, but most of them ended up malfunctioning. The soldiers' weapons didn't fire, and this led to a massacre. Now Vought America, they were given these contracts because they had people in the government. However, over time, their constant failings drew a lot of attention. Eventually, Bobby Kennedy spoke about them at the Senate and called out their constant incompetence. This made the entire stock price plummet, and thus they tried a different tactic. This is when they created Homelander and took things in a new direction. This established Vought America, which is how it was known in the comics, with it then getting shortened to Vought for the show. The old logo is a classic 1950s style and then transitions into a movie poster. That is the Curse of Fu Manchu, which is a figure who's been talked about a lot recently. Fu Manchu was a villain who featured in a range of different medias, from books to shows and movies. He basically became a stereotypical Asian villain who's now seen as a racist caricature. In Marvel, the Mandarin was based around him, with them having to update things due to backlash. Even when promoting Shang-Chi in China, Kevin Feige had to clear it up they weren't basing things on him.
Well, you know, that is just one of the truths about the early comic books, that Fu Manchu was a part of that story in the early comics. Fu Manchu is not a Marvel character. Fu Manchu is not a character we own or would ever want to own. And that was changed in the comics many years ago. And we never had any intention of doing that in this movie. Fu Manchu is not in this movie in any way, shape, or form.
Can't believe we're like 2 minutes in the video and I'm having to explain Fu Manchu. Dear me. And next we get the Budweiser Liberty advert that was used heavily in season 2. This is what was used to show that she and Stormfront were one and the same. However, I don't actually think it ever got made public knowledge, which is why they're happy parading it here. They also showed it at the con in episode 2, which showcases how little people know. Now from here we go to an anti-communist movie in 1967. That is Crimson, in which the Crimson Countess takes on the Reds. Heading into the 70s, we then get a parody of Keep America Beautiful. This originally had a Native American watching someone littering and then tears rolling down their eyes. With it being Vought though, they of course had a white guy playing the Native American. There's a long list of white actors who play Native Americans, and even as recent as 2013, Johnny Depp got a lot of backlash in The Lone Ranger. Here it's titled Big Chief Apache Says, Don't Litter Kemosabe, and I can see that you've CGI'd a tear on him. Now if you look back through history, there's been a lot of times when Native American characters were overlooked in fiction. For example, the original X-Men cartoon had Thunderbird popping up in the intro. Originally he was going to die in the first episode, but they changed it up to Morph. It felt like having a Native American character killed off would cause some issues, so just removed him from the team but left him in the intro. I don't know how public perception on it currently stands, but you can see how either way Thunderbird didn't get to shine. We then cut to This Means Noir, released in 1979. We've already seen Noir's time around this decade, with him wanting to be the Soup's Eddie Murphy. However, he was told he had to cover his face, and after he was burned, he was fully restricted to wearing a mask. In season 1, we learned that Seth Rogen was working on a movie with Noir, with that being called Insurrection. Next is the Crimson Countess movie, Whiskey Sunrise, which featured heavily in Gen V. There it appeared throughout the series, with it being a play on the movie Tequila Sunrise. After that is the return of Payback, with us getting Red Thunder 2. We have seen clips of the first one before, with it being a Rambo 3 parody set in Afghanistan. There's then Y2 Chaos with Lamplighter, before we get Queen Maeve's Wonder Woman parody. You can also see you can experience the movie in 3D, but this was released in 2007. That makes it 2 years before Avatar popularized it, and Queen Maeve did it first. Girls get it done. The next is the Aquaman parody Rising Tide, which of course stars the deep. The tagline is go deep or go home, which you kids know what that means. And next we have Translucent's film Invisible Force 2, which we also saw several posters of in Gen V. Lastly is The Dawn of the Seven, which is a film we saw being shot throughout Season 2. They then showed a scene from it at the start of Season 3, with the opening of that season being based around the premiere. Now all of the films in the VCU are listed on the wiki, with some of these titles pulling from that. We then get some clips from Dawn of the Seven, which are intercut with Maeve in the Deep. A flash of Cameron Coleman then takes us into our logos, in which we have a Marvel Studios parody in the top left. Next, there's a Telemundo one before we get the Vought News Network. Below that is the Disney Plus parody Vought Plus, and to the left of it's VTV, which is designed solely for women.
This is what the Deep movie Not Without My Dolphin was released on,
because they wanted to push him back around to women accepting him after his cancellation. To the left of that is American Hero, which is a series we saw during Season 3. This is what allowed the Deep to return to the Seven, with him getting a placement at the last second. You deserved it, mate, you deserved it, well done. Above that is Vought Soul, with this being a channel for black audiences. All of these channels are listed on the wiki as well, with them missing the following in Vought Classic, Vought Entertainment Television, Vought Kids, VBS, and lastly Voughtify. Cutting to another clip of Dawn of the Seven, we can also see A-Train's Turbo Rush advertised on the bus. They then do the Energy Beam Clash, which is a staple of anime and superhero movies. Pulling out, we can see a lot of the fans in cosplay with Homelander off to the side. I love the way the music kinda winds down and goes out of tune, as it shows he's starting to go a bit crazy. The downturn of this score is also something they did in Gen V when he arrived at Godolphin University. We see flashes of his childhood, including him as a baby, and also when he was locked up in the oven cell to test his skin. This latter one caused a lot of trauma for him, and it's clear he hasn't sorted out his issues. Lastly, we cut to Ryan, which personifies this messed up childhood maybe pushed onto his son. This trauma has caused him to act and think a certain way, which is now influencing his kids. For example, if your dad was experimented on in a lab by humans, he'd probably then tell you that humans suck. So Ryan's gonna develop the same mind state as him, even though he hasn't been through the exact same trauma. It's something that's been studied socially, and there's several examples where people determine that distrust in the police often stem from people's parents having bad run-ins with them. They then told their children, who adopted this mentality as well, so when they were around the police, they naturally got their back up. Now that the police are obviously an example there, and there's lots of different groups this can apply to, but I always tend to use that one because that's the thing that's in the main reports that I've read that this entire study was based around. Anyway, going off on a massive tangent there, and on the flip side, you can apply to Billy too. He had a really bad run-in with the Supes, which then made him hate everything they stand for. Potentially, he may even use this to turn Ryan against his dad, but either way, they're pushing their own issues onto the next generation. Super psycho, babble wabble theory time stuff, and what a way to bog down the video. Anyway, Vought are here to announce their slate, which it's an obvious parody of Marvel and DC. They're announcing phases 7 to 19, which is taking the mick out of how many movies they try and plan out in advance. Rather than going project to project, they just announce entire slates without even making a script. Now, I think it worked really well for the first 3 phases of the MCU, but lately we've seen how difficult it is to stick to it. We then get a timeline of all these properties, with these graphics and logos of course playing off the big slates. Now the first one in phase 7 is Training A-Train, with that being the Blindside parody they shot in episode 2. Next is a Homelander film before we get a 7 Reborn film, which I'm guessing is a reboot. DC are currently doing one at the moment, with James Gunn announcing a slate just like this one. Next is Super School, with the boys themselves even doing a younger spin-off in Gen V. Now this is kind of a play on how all the actors in the MCU, they're now starting to age out, so they're looking at new younger characters. There are rumblings that they're making a Young Avengers, and we later learn that Ryan's leading Super School. Potentially, it does drop out. Either way, moving on. Now below that, in phase 7, is Firecracker Lord Soldier, which we see a clip of later on. Churches and cathedrals have featured heavily in comic book films, with the climax of Daredevil. However, what I think this scene reminds me of is when Eddie Brock went to one in Spider-Man 3 and begged God to kill Peter Parker. Classic scene, and this is from their new studio, Vought Faith. Marvel have launched lots of sub-branch divisions such as animation and also Marvel Spotlight, which this is clearly paying off of. We then have the deep secrets of Atlantis, with that being where Aquaman lives and Namor's from in the comics. Deep is sort of a combination between the two, so it makes sense they'd have this as his home in the movies. Next is the Tech Knight, with the logo being akin to the Batman one. Later on, we hear it's been a whole year since his last movie, so we're due for a reboot. Obviously, there's been multiple reboots of Batman, and it's even got to the point we've got several of them in the same movie, while we also have a one-off in a different alternate universe. We hear it's filled with Nirvana hits, and Nirvana was used on the soundtrack of the Batman, with their song Something in the Way being used throughout that film. After that, in Phase 8, we have a Baywatch parody with the Deep called Lifeguard Summer. There's then the Seven Returns, Tech Knight, Night Light, which, disappointing there's no hole pun there, mate. There's then G2 G-Men, which is of course a play on X2. The G-Men were in the books, and their leader was Godolkin, which eventually got adapted into Gen V. There he was a totally different kind of character though, with him being a Professor X figure that abused his students. There's then Homelander, Soldier Boy Annihilation, A-Train Off the Tracks, Firecracker Heaven's Miracle, and then Teenage Kicks Home for Kwanzaa 2, with the Kicks being a group from the comics. If we jump back to the video store earlier in the season, we could see posters for the first film at one point between Victoria and Billy. Phase 9 is then Double Standard, which not sure exactly what this is, but guessing it's a 007/Mission Impossible spy movie due to the title and laser. Dubbed the most expensive TV show ever, it's said to have just finished its reshoots of the reshoots. Obviously, throwing a shot at Marvel there, they do reshoots all the time, and the new Captain America, it's even been delayed several times because they have to do major reshoots on top of reshoots. There's then the Deep's Gods and Dolphins, which is a play off the DCU slate titled Gods and Monsters. Next is a Flash/Spider-Verse parody with A-Train going into the multiverse. Firecracker will be in God Help Me, with Teenage Kicks returning for Ditch Day. Their films are obviously kid and teenager ones, with the logos being based off stuff like High School Musical. There's then Homelander Justice Serve, which is probably something to do with justice. And sorry mate, I've got to read all these out. Black Noir Back to Hanoi 3, The Seven Forever based on Batman Forever, another Tech Knight film, G3 G-Men based on X-Men 3 The Last Stand, and that takes us into Phase 10. Phase 10 has Silent Vengeance 3, with its 2 being a Batman parody. There's then Flipped, which we learn stars Sam and Kate. It's the classic body swap movie starring the two. I did wonder if this was kind of going to play off the Marvels, and though that didn't do the conventional body swap, the characters still switched places. It was great seeing Kate and Sam back either way, with them being 2 characters from Gen V. There's then Speedwalkers 2, and a play on the Guardians Christmas special with a Christmas wish. We then have another Tech Knight film with Let There Be Night, and Teenage Kicks starring in Sex Ed. Lastly is my favourite Easter egg, which is G-Men Days Past from the Future, which is of course a play on Days of Future Past, which, even though I don't know what it means, it sounds cool. Anyway, Cameron Coleman says he'll be sharing the full list in exhaustive detail, which could have saved me 10 minutes, mate, because we're just at the intro and I'm exhausted already. Now things will get quicker, I promise, because we then join Hughie, whose dad's waking up from last week. I was actually thinking they might do a play on the comics where those injected with V sometimes come back as zombies. We saw this in the case of the Blarney Cock, who returned from the dead after being killed by Hughie. V had supercharged his brain and allowed his body to reanimate. This also happened in the case of Lamplighter and Nubia as well. It is something that Hughie brings up at the hospital, with V having different effects depending on who it's injected into. Originally it was only intended for children, as people had issues with it when they grew up. Now I thought with it being Simon Pegg, they might do a Shaun of the Dead parody, but you could argue it's even more messed up. His dad Hugh seems great at first, but we see as it devolves into a curse. It kind of reminds me of horror movies where someone's inflicted with something. Werewolves, bloody werewolves, and Jeff Goldblum in The Fly. They always wake up feeling great at first, but we see as it quickly changes. Now he wants to go to Paris and see all the sites of the Da Vinci Code, and as we know, he is an avid book lover. Hughie ignored his calls because he thought he was just ringing up to talk about his nerd stuff. Now though he doesn't really get a second chance at life, what he does get is a chance to say goodbye. So yeah, I think it's kind of bittersweet, and though it ends badly, there's at least some comfort there. Hughie's told to not look a gift horse in the mouth though, and accepting the blessing that's come with the V. His mother, of course, has connections to mortality, so she is less suspicious. Hughie, on the other hand, knows what it's like and the curse that can often come with it. He's haunted by the past, and we know something dark's inside him, which is 2 Meriden Butcher who blacked out last week. We'll talk about this more later on, but Firecracker's been using it for political gain. She's blaming Starlight even though she had an alibi. She's also putting pressure on her about the abortion, and we see her HQs being covered in graffiti. It's a harassment campaign on a massive scale, with it obviously evoking the idea of cancel culture. Cutting to Mother's Milk and his family, we see Milk rocking a big pun t-shirt. Hope that he doesn't get found dead in the middle of little do we know that he riddled some middleman who didn't do diddly. Pun was of course a legendary rapper, with Milk continuing to wear hip-hop acts, including his partner in rhyme Fat Joe. When Milk's at the Flatiron later on, we can see him rocking Fat Joe on his hoodie, which is a great little thing for the episode. And apologise for my rap, but I've got something for you, yeah? If you love clothes and the boys, then definitely check out me and the boys memes inspired shirt right below the video. It's got your memes, it's got your joke, mate, and it all goes towards helping videos like this get made. We have new ones for House of the Dragon, and as always, our theory time ones and more. Huge thank you if you've picked one up. Now let's get into the rest of the video. Now around Milk's living room on the photos to the left, we can also see Biggie and Tupac. There's lots of civil rights movements photos as well, including a sign from the Black Panthers. Now Janine's been suspended for fighting, with her rebellious side coming out. We mentioned this in our breakdowns before, but in case you missed it, Janine's out of control when we first meet her in the comics. It's only when she starts to appreciate how much her dad does for her that she starts to change for the better. He's having a nightmare though with his family, and they're all kind of going through it. This is reflected in Billy, who's realizing he might not even need his team. Looking over photos taken of the woods, we see the holding cells that were shown in Gen V. Now, in case you missed it, this school's been used to develop the anti-soups virus, and this is why the file says Godolphin University. Deciding to work with Kessler, these benches are where the series has established lots of relationships. In the comics, Butcher and Hughie built their friendship there, and it's where the former decided to join the group. He later met Annie at one, with several of their scenes in the show also being shot at benches. Here, it's a different kind of relationship, as Billy's with someone who'll finally let him off the leash. Kessler co-signs his dark side and is willing to embolden him. Cutting to the Flatiron, we see Kimiko cutting up an app status on exactly where her life is. She's putting on a happy face though, and it kind of builds off the conversation in the van where she said if Frenchie was happy, she was happy. Even though she's not speaking, you can read just so much into her body language, and everyone's having a bad time. Yay! That includes Frenchie, who's still dealing with the aftermath of Colin learning the truth. He's had to hide away this darker side to him, which is also echoed in Butcher. He has no idea who in the team he can actually use, and after Kessler's words, he views them all as less than. Kessler's kinda always been the devil on his shoulder, who's trying to talk him down a darker path. He says that this is Butcher's last shot at Homelander. Well, season 5 is obviously, but yeah, now he's off the leash, he's kinda doing things on his own, which we see in the end though Kessler's alongside him. This darkness I feel is manifesting in his blackouts, with him having no idea what happened with Ezekiel. Later on, he discovers a creature coming from a V24 bunny, and we have theorized that there's a sort of symbiote within Bully. That's a theory time. But it is possible that he could end up becoming something like Venom, and this is how he took down the villain. Either way, Butcher wants to get his hands on the virus, and they're going to try and steal Newman's. If you cast your mind back to the end of Gen V, then you might remember that the scientist behind its creation handed it over before she took him out. So it's all kind of pulling that together, and back at V52, we see a dedication to Ezekiel. Clips of him from season 1 are shown over the top of Sarah McLachlan's I Will Remember You. The song has obviously been used at a lot of funerals, but the main thing I remember it from is The Office.
I will remember you.
You might notice that the Deep's also eyeing up Cameron Coleman suspiciously, with this paying off later in the episode. Not only do we learn Deep's taking his reporting personally, but there's also something else going on. He's suspected as the leak, with Sage also doing some questioning. Now that takes us into theory time. Okay, so I actually have a theory that Sage is in fact trying to dismantle the Seven from within. When questioning A-Train, she says the footage didn't just run its way out of crime analytics. Emphasis on the run there. Secondly, just before they kill Coleman later on, she looks over to him as if she's keeping his secret. I do wonder if she's actually playing the long game and removing the network of Homelander's support one by one, but doing it in a really subtle way. If we look at how everything's been, she's ended up getting 3 of Homelander's biggest fans killed. She's had Firecracker beaten up twice, and also of course her best mate killed too. Now this episode, the target goes to Cameron Coleman, and it's all because of things she's doing. He's obviously run tons of positive PR for Homelander, and thus taking him down is another strike at the character. We know she's super intelligent as well, so I don't think she'd constantly fall for these traps, and to me at least, she is playing the long game. Sage was of course ostracized and sent to Detroit, with her being labeled the most annoying member of Teenage Kicks. So personally, I think she's doing this all to get revenge, and maybe even putting the country on a better path. Anyway, that's an theory. I think if I could turn back theory time, because I keep getting stuff wrong all the time.
Over at the prison, we then get a returning character in Stan Edgar, and it was so good seeing Giancarlo back. Guy's in prison, but we hear he's basically living the high life and also doing pottery classes. I'm not sure what the state of prisons are like these days, but it kind of reminded me of that bit in Goodfellas where we see the mafia are basically treating it like a hotel. Singer has granted a presidential pardon on the condition that he helps them get the virus. Now, he was of course a father figure not only to Homelander but also Victoria. She ended up betraying him, and though he initially doesn't want to do it, he changes his mind when he hears about Zoe. We saw what happened to her in episode 1, with her now being a mutated monster. I love when they come face to face later on, and it's laced with lots of treachery. It's revealed Edgar actually wants to take her, and I wonder if that's the direction they're heading in for the future. Now, as he walks out of the prison, you can see he has an ankle monitor on, and I do wonder if later on they'll use this as a way to trace both him and Newman. Now, back at the hospital, Hugh reminds Hughie about their cat Jojo, which Hughie refused to put down. His father says he holds on too tight to things and refuses to let go even when it's the right thing to do. This is why Hugh had his DNR, as he wanted to make that decision for Hughie. This thematically plays into the end, as Hughie has to step up and learn to let go. However, I feel Hugh had his difficulties too. Even asking where his mother's gone when she's popped off to the bathroom, it shows that he still lives with the trauma of her walking out. Might also reflect his memory issues, which we'll talk about more later on. Now, he might have even subconsciously pushed the fear of letting go onto Hughie, which is something he has to overcome. Also, Simon Pegg did a massive rant about the prequels in Spaced, which this could be a nod to.
You weren't there at the beginning. You don't know how good it was, how important. This is it for you, this jumped up firework display of a toy advert. People like you make me sick. What's wrong with you? Now, I don't care if you've saved up all your 50p's, okay? Take your pocket money and get out! What a prick.
Cutting to the boys discovering the lab, they find what's basically a bloodbath. It takes animal testing to a whole new level, with V being injected into lots of different species. Mr. Fuzzy Buzzy, Season 5 villain confirmed! Oh, no, never mind. And Victoria arrives, and they get to the point of a stalemate and try and track down a man called Samir. Back at B52, we hear about the new diversity initiative titled Black Addict. Obviously, this is a comment on how diversity is often suspected of being used by corporations as a marketing tool to appeal to certain audiences. They say it's not go woke, go broke, it's go woke, get yoked, and we hear they came up with a way to alter advertisements in movies to appeal specifically to black people. However, these are just playing on stereotypes, and they're clearly just using their black and unspecified members, looking at Noir, to make some money. This is highlighted in Sister Sage, and we can see her off to the side holding a Brave Maeve diary. This was obviously used to appeal to gay people, even though they didn't want any of Maeve's input. It's all just marketing, and we then jump to Adam Burke discussing Super School. We learn he's been texting his assistant Bonnie and is being a creep. Gen V was where we learned he'd exposed himself to Minka Kelly, who in real life said she'd had an uncomfortable encounter with Harvey Weinstein. He brings that up again here, but says it was crossed wires. Also, you might notice he's wearing a t-shirt that's a reference to Jaws with the 3 barrels floating in the water. Now, Ryan wants to drop out of Super School, and Homelander gets Burke to hand over his wallet and car. He still turns it down, but I love how when he steps outside, you can see that he still has his keys and wallet in his hand. Now, whereas Homelander grew up with rules and restrictions, he doesn't want them for his son. However, they're important because they keep people in line. Being a teenager without them, you could bloody get Brightburn, and yeah, it's an interesting way to take it. Now, thematically, we see this idea of fathers and their children with Victoria and Edgar. He put rules and restrictions on her, and all it did was make her rebel. On the flip side of this, Homelander's letting his son be free in the hopes that he will want to be with him instead. Ryan's been sneaking off to see Butcher, but Homelander hopes it keeps him close instead of pushing him away. Victoria believes Edgar hid her away because he was ashamed, and having to hide who she is has vastly affected her. Because of this, the boys are able to control her, and this is why she's been forced into a truce. Ryan is allowed to be who he wants, and thus in the end he's not gaining as many psychological issues. In the long run though, it might still push him away from Homelander because he'll see the monster his dad really is. He says he wants to help people, and it's of course an opposite to his dad. Now Edgar brings up how Prince Andrew gave him his shoes, and this walks akin to the one that he took with an old mate. Get demonetized probably if I bring up his name, but he said that he only flew out to tell him that their friendship was over, which is something that this scene sort of feels like. In the end though, it's all about control, with Victoria and this entire place being set up to control Homelander. Now from here we sort of devolve into the chicken fights, with it being one of the wildest scenes that we've had in The Boys. Back at Seven Tower, we then see as Coleman dumps Ashley because she's not as dominating as she used to be, as she's only the CEO in name. Had this not happened though, then she wouldn't let Coleman go out the way he does. We then also have some back and forth with Sage and Firecracker. I think Sage is kind of playing the long game and getting her in harm's way to be taken down, with all the pieces starting to fall in place. With Annie and Victoria, we hear the questioning of her identity and how Annie's anger is forcing her to lash out. Newman has had to hide away her Nadia, and the two are a lot closer than you'd think. Both had another side to them, but whereas Annie operates in the light, Newman does it in the dark. This anger is very much bursting forth though, which is too played upon in the rabbit that Butcher then finds. Whatever it is in him will eventually come forth soon, because all things with B end badly. This is highlighted in Hugh, who's now able to phase through objects. This means he's lethal if he stops inside of someone. This is something that they often discuss with Kitty Pryde, and how if she pulled someone through and left them in an object, it would instantly kill them. That's why I was proper annoyed, mate, when she did it to the Juggernaut and he just climbed out of it.
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
They've been talking about it in the comics for years and you ruined it. Anyway, he's tearing up the hospital, and is that Dan Stevens? Couldn't see him in the credits, but I had to double take, and yeah, it does look a lot like him. It's a bloodbath like what happened with Jar Jar, because Hughie couldn't let go. It's heartbreaking seeing him mentally relapse and regress to a time when Hughie was 11. This includes him lashing out at Daphne, and it explains why his powers have manifested like this. He said she walked through him like he wasn't even there, which explains why he is the way he is. He's now doing the same to his victims, and yeah, really good performance by Simon Pegg here. Now cutting to V52, we see Ryan helping Bonnie by getting Adam to back off and apologise. While Ryan's trying to do for the right reasons, he abuses his power due to his dad's influence. Adam is in trouble for abusing the power dynamic, but Homelander and Ryan are doing the same thing. Because they've killed in the past without repercussions, both can now do what they want. It's a toxic influence, and it shows the darker side within him. Children often ultimately follow in their parents' footsteps, and this is shown in both Ryan and Victoria. In the end, she helps free her dad, but I feel like there may be more backstabbing down the line. Again, thematically, there's a darkness within all the characters, and I love how this kept manifesting. Annie then questions her faith after seeing Frenchie with rosary beads. They bring up the idea of forgiveness, which is a theme we talked about heavily last week. Homelander's entire time in the lab was about that, and Hughie had to learn to forgive his mother. Frenchie is unable to forgive himself for what he's done, and he doesn't think his sins can be washed away. Thus he hands himself into the police, missing out Kimiko's message for them to be together. We don't get long on it though, as it all hits the fan, with superpowered sheep making mincemeat of everyone. They try to ram their way into the barn, and it's here they come across Samir. Played by Omid Abtahi, you might recognise him from The Mandalorian. Revealed to be Zoe's dad, he talks about how they first experimented on a hamster. This hamster that Samir experimented on was likely Jamie, who we met back in Season 3, Episode 4.
I don't went through 3 of them. Oh, shit. Motherfucking Vito hamster.
The hamster appeared in a major way in the comics, as we learned the Blondie cock had been shoving one up his you-know-where. After Hughie killed him, he took him as a pet, but the cock came back as the undead looking for his pet. There's one vial left, and though the dead guy is in no condition to do some sheep shagging, they can have his body eaten. Monsters are outside, and they have to inject something into a body, which is then reflected in how Hughie saves his dad. Bringing up a childhood memory to show how his dad was his hero, this brings back the man he was. Back at the barn, the sheep succumb to the diseases, and I thought they were going to get out of there when pigs fly. Hey, pigs fly? Fucking hell. Now, using this as a distraction, Samir's grab, which we later learn's been done by Butcher. Edgar's sent back to jail due to not obtaining the virus, and we learn Billy's tied up Samir. Everyone's doing terrible things for the greater good, which is something Homelander says in his speech at the tower. Victoria frees Edgar for what she views as the greater good, and Butcher's cutting up Samir to get more of the virus. Back at the tower, we see as Coleman's killed, and learn it was Ashley who planted the evidence on his phone. Sam and Kay, they're also there as well, with them being drafted in the ranks of Homelander's forces. In the comics, his goal was to build a super army, and it seems like that's what he's doing here. He saved Kate and Sam at the end of Gen V after they carried out a massacre on campus. Now they're indebted to him, and will loyally follow him until the end. I love this boardroom scene, and them killing a regular guy kinda sums up what the entire plan is. He's willing to do evil things in the name of what he believes is good. He won't sacrifice what he wants though, whereas Hughie finally grows up and in the end says goodbye to his father. Trying not to cry, but he dies with his family around him. I say goodbye to my granddad like this, and yeah, the scene really hit me hard. Now he ends up thinking about the Da Vinci Code tour as he goes on to what's hopefully a better life. It's basically a reverse of the ending of last week without having Hugh wake up, whereas here he's going to sleep. Now there are some theories, namely one from Ryan, bloody Ryan Airy, that Kessler is all in Butcher's mind. As we know, he's had several hallucinations before with people regularly showing up. It could be a case that Kessler isn't real either, which is slightly shown to us with Samir. He almost looks as if to say, who are you talking to? And we haven't seen Kessler interacting with anyone else. The only place I think this theory falls apart though is the drugs that he gave Butcher earlier in the season. Maybe Butcher got them himself though, and mental states and psychological problems are something a lot of characters are facing. Haven't even touched upon Annie losing her powers, which is akin to Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2. Seems like the stress is causing performance issues, and yeah, lots of things going on. Either way, we close out with Samir being tied up in a barn and us getting some of that classic Butcher. Smiling away, we hear old MacDonald had a farm, which then ends the episode. Now, I was a bit so-so after episodes 1 to 3, but then I loved 4 and thought this was another strong entry. It had comedy, that insane stuff that the boys brings, but it also had an emotional moment that made me tear up while watching it. I really enjoyed this one as well. I hope you guys did too, and make sure you drop your comments below with your thoughts on the episode. Please hit a thumbs up as well, and if you want to support the channel as a member of the Spoiler Society, then please click the join button. We get early access to videos every week, and it goes a massive way towards helping us out. Again, if you want to get some heavy spoilers merch, you've got our t-shirt line located below the video. That will let you pick up all kinds of tops like our Boys one, Theory Time one, House of Dragons stuff, Marvel tees and more. We drop new designs on there all the time too, like our Alien Chestburster one, so definitely keep an eye out, and thanks for your support. Now if you want something else to watch, you've got a breakdown of House of the Dragon on screen right now. Going over the whole season, absolutely loving it, so yeah, definitely head over there right after this. Out of the way, huge thank you for sticking through the video. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.